Okay, I am Subbarao Penamneni, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Chalpati Institute of Engineering and Technology, Guntur, India. Today, I am going to give you a brief introduction to social network analysis. Social network analysis is a method by which one can analyze the connections across individuals or groups or institutions. Social network analysis is a method by which one can analyze the connections across individuals or groups or institutions. That is, it allows us to examine how political actors or institutions are interrelated. The advantage of social network analysis is that, unlike many other methods, it focuses on interaction rather than on individual behavior. Network analysis allows us to examine how the configuration of networks influences how individuals and groups, organizations or systems function. Network analysis allows us to examine how the configuration of networks influences how individuals and groups, organizations or systems function. It can be applied across disciplines. For example, it has applications in computer science, it has applications in information science, it has applications in social networks, it has applications in geography, it has applications in biology, it has applications in political networks, electrical networks, transportation networks, and so on. First, let us discuss the history of network analysis to give you an idea of what sorts of questions can be posed. Then we will discuss some basic concepts. Much early research in network analysis is found in educational psychology and studies of child development. Initially, it was used in educational psychology and studies of child development. Network analysis also developed in fields such as sociology and anthropology. History of in the 19th century, Durkheim wrote of social facts. What are social facts? Phenomena that are created by the interactions of individuals, yet constitute a reality that is independent of any individual actor. Or phenomena that are created by interactions of individuals, yet constitute a reality that is independent of any individual actor. History of social network analysis. At the turn of the 20th century, Simmel was one of the first scholars to think in relatively explicit social network terms. He examined how third parties could affect the relationship between two individuals. He examined how third parties could affect the relationship between two individuals. And he examined how organizational structures or bureaucracies were needed to coordinate interactions in large groups. At the turn of the 20th century, Simmel was one of the first scholars to think in relatively explicit social network terms. He examined how third parties could affect the relationship between two individuals, and he examined how organizational structures or bureaucracies were needed to coordinate interactions in large groups. One of the first examples of empirical network research was found in 1922 In Almack's, the influence of intelligence on the selection of associates. In Almack's, the influence of intelligence on the selection of associates. Almack asked children in a California elementary school to identify the classmates with whom they wanted as playmates. Almack asked children in a California elementary school to identify the classmates with whom they wanted as playmates. He then correlated the IQs of the choosers and the chosen and examined the hypothesis that choices were homophilous. In 1926, Wellman recorded pairs of individuals who were observed as being together frequently. She also recorded trait or attribute data, including the student's height, grades, IQ, score on a physical coordination test, and degree of introversion versus extraversion based on teachers' ratings. She then examined whether interaction was homophilous. In 1926, Wellman recorded pairs of individuals who were observed as being together frequently. She also recorded trait or attribute data, including the student's height, grades, IQ, and score on a physical coordination test and degree of introversion versus extraversion based on teachers' ratings. She then examined whether interaction was homophilous. In 1928, Bott took an ethnographic approach examining the behavior of preschool children in Toronto. She identified 5 types of interaction: talking to one another, interfering with one another, watching one another, imitating one another, or cooperating with one another. She identified 5 types of interaction. What are they? Talking to one another, interfering with one another, watching one another, imitating one another, or cooperating with one another. She then used focal sampling, observing one child each day. Note that Bott's work also was a harbinger of the network research which was to follow, in that she organized her data into matrices and discussed her results in terms of linkages between individuals. Bott discussed her results in terms of linkages between individuals. In the companionships of preschool children, Hagman, 1933, both observed interaction throughout the term and interviewed children to measure their recollections of their interaction earlier in the term. He observed the interaction throughout the term and interviewed children to measure their recollections of their interactions earlier in the term. Note that these studies raise several issues: how to link attributes such as IQ to interaction, the difference between observational approaches and relying on individuals' own accounts of their patterns of interactions, difference between observational approaches and relying on individuals' own accounts of their patterns of interactions, the many different ways in which individuals can interact, how to think about longitudinal aspects of interaction, how to think about longitudinal aspects of interaction. In 1933, the New York Times reported on the new science of psychological geography which aims to chart the emotional currents, cross currents, and undercurrents of human relationships in a community. Psychological chart geography aims to chart the emotional currents, cross currents, and undercurrents of human relationships in a community. Jacob Moreno analyzed the interconnections across 500 girls in the state training schools for girls and the interactions of students within two NYC schools, New York City schools. Moreno concluded that many relationships were non-reciprocal and that many individuals were isolated. Moreno's quantitative method to map relationships is called sociometry. That's all I have for this class. Thank you.